On the air,
I know.
I'll call
Shape
the
up.
Londonderry Heritage Historic District Commission meeting to order for January 27th, 2022. Chris cannot be here tonight, the chair. I'm the vice chair, so I will try to conduct a logical meeting. First thing that we have, use the planning board stuff. I was going to give the, well, just for, I worked for DuPont for quite a few years, and you get safety indoctrinated into you. So for everyone's benefit here, this room has two exits. They're on the right-hand side of the audience, the front and the back of the room. If we need to evacuate for any reason, we ask you to proceed through the exit closest to you, go outside, move away from the building, and don't come back in till our fire officials have instructed us to do so. And let's get right to the approval of the minutes of November 18th, 2021. If everyone's had a chance to review them, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Make a motion
I'm
to
good.
approve them as presented.
That's it. That's you
Okay,
gotta say.
Jim has made a motion to accept the minutes as presented. Do you have a second?
Oh, I'll second.
Second by Sue. Any discussion by the board on those minutes? All right with everyone? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Abstentions? And it's unanimous. Minutes pass, and I just want to point out, Laura's not here, and Chris is not here. It gives us 6 voting members. It's a quorum, we can do business anyway. Okay, next we have the our design and formal review applications. We have an application for a formal review of a site plan amendment for a change of use for equipment sales, rental service, and parking lot configuration, outdoor display and storage areas, and associated site improvements at number 2 Rebel Road and number 345 Dairy Road, tax map 101, lots 18 and 19, zone business district B. Okay, this is Hudson. Because this lot is part is in Hudson, part is in Londonderry.
Oh, no wonder I
So
saw.
both towns have to, and this has been before the planning board already. And then 307 Nashua Road, Londonderry map, tax map 2, lot 34A, zone commercial 1, commercial 2, and Route 102 Performance Overlay District. Bobcat of New Hampshire is the applicant, and Mar LLC is the owner. This is continued from the November 18th, 2022 meeting for signage. This just deals with the sign. Anyone here? Oh, okay. Come to the front here and to the microphones and just identify yourselves for our records, please.
Pete Tone, I'm the general manager of Bobcat, New Hampshire. And I'm Mark Lippman, I'm with New Hampshire Signs, who's producing the sign for Pete.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take one, why not?
What copy? That'd be me. That's probably good exercise. Yeah, I need to keep.
Gentlemen, before you get going, could I get spelling on the last names?
DE, capital Tone.
Thank you. Tina, did you get a business card?
They're in my car.
Even better.
John's the secretary, so he's the, doing all the scribing work for us, so. We just want to make sure the names get spelled right and everything. The worst thing is.
I've been called worse, so don't.
All set, John?
Yep.
Okay. You can start. The floor.
So I wasn't here on the last meeting. Jason Hill from TF Moran was representing us as the site engineer. He had come back to tell us your recommendations. We consulted with New Hampshire Signs. Mark is here to represent that. And This is the mock-up of the sign itself, the size of it, the scope of it, and the bottom base of which we're going to create that stone face to make it a natural look. As far as lighting goes, I'll have Mark explain more about that in depth.
It's a standard double-faced illuminated sign. It's a UL-approved LED bank of LEDs. And what we try to do is we have an opaque vinyl in if you can see, the orange is opaque, which means at night, all you'll see is the copy come through. And anything you see in white at night will be illuminated. And other than that, nothing else will be. And it is per all the codes in town for illumination.
I'll go through the commission. I'll start with David.
I have nothing.
You okay with the lighting, Dave?
Pardon?
Are you okay with the lighting?
I'm not sure what else we can do about it.
Okay, just checking.
Yeah, I mean, that got me too.
Anything else, David?
No.
Okay, John?
Yeah, I thought we had agreement that the lighting would be shut off at night, coming out of our last meeting.
The lighting of the sign completely shut off?
Yeah, once.
Then
the-
we
after
consulted with
business
New
hours.
Hampshire Signs to come up with a solution to hopefully be a better compromise of that backing where it's not going to be fully illuminated, just the letters like Mark just explained.
Laura, what was the position, do you remember from last time?
We discussed about all non-essential lighting needs to be turned off after office hours, or after, when your business isn't in operation, there should be no lights on the sign.
Now, is that a town code or is that a recommendation from this committee?
That's in the site plan regulations, and we discussed that last time.
Okay. Are you familiar with that?
I was
Mark?
not aware of that at all, quite frankly. And looking at the codes, it didn't seem like there was any time restraints. If we can talk about something to shut off a timer at a certain time, but from what we understand, there was no limit whatsoever. And there are some signs along the road that are still illuminated when hours.
My only concern is that, I mean, at what time are you guys referring to? Because during certain times of the year, we are still open when it is dark, and we do operate a business. Now, we're not open late, but there's a short window of time come 4 o'clock where the sign needs to be illuminated.
Well, I think we're saying business hours here, Laura, so if they had a night when they were open till 9, then they'd be fine.
And that's a concession we'll make.
Okay.
Yeah, because if the lights in the sign are off, people know you're not open, so it lets the public know what, so you don't have people snooping around after hours.
I mean, we will have security lights throughout the perimeter of our
Yes.
And
both
those are
buildings
allowed
and
to
our
be on.
yards to illuminate, so for security reasons, with surveillance cameras.
My pen go.
What's that, John?
Well, just because I think I interjected this last time, there was, and there have been ongoing discussions with new applicants, I think, about future building upgrades, things that you might do in the future, because as I recall, you're not going to do a lot to the building itself.
Yeah, the old Dubois building that's situated in Londonderry, we're really not doing any cosmetic changes other than a paint job. The main construction is going to be on that Rebel Road building, which is in Hudson.
I'm sorry, other than a paint job?
Yep.
Did we get paint colors?
We haven't even determined that yet.
Okay, so I think that.
It's probably gonna be white, to be honest with you. Nothing absurd.
No pink, no orange.
No.
Yeah.
No Bobcat Orange, come
We-
on.
Oh, yeah.
Let's
Don't
believe it.
even
Hey,
go there.
believe it or not, we
Hold
don't
the
want
sign.
more attention.
Yeah, I know.
So I think we have a note here from Chris, who's not here tonight, that there was a general agreement that whatever you do on the exterior of that building, you'll bring it back to us
Of course.
for review.
Yep.
I don't think you're gonna have a problem with white, although Jim gets touchy sometimes, but.
No, I get touchy with the Battleship Gray.
Oh, okay. But if you could agree to bring back anything that you do to the exterior of that building, we'd
Absolutely.
appreciate it. Okay, great. I'm all
But
set.
anything we do to that building is going to look a lot better than in its current existence, so I will promise you that.
You know, we all hope so. Okay.
Yeah. So-
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Maybe I suggest a timer on the sign, like at 10 o'clock, it shuts off automatically. every day.
Absolutely.
Just, it'll be easier.
You aren't there at 10 at all. Yeah, that's, I think, a time that we've used.
Well, I just said 10 to say 10,
Yeah.
I mean.
Because most businesses close then or before then.
Understood.
Anything else, Jim?
No, I'm good. I'm good with it.
Sue?
Yep, I'm good.
Okay, and, yeah, I'm fine, so. And you've got a condition on the, site plan, so.
And this will move to the planning board now? Our recommendation?
Planning board heard from them
This was pending
last.
the final decision.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so this is one of the last condition of approval
Okay.
was to meet with the Heritage Commission.
Got
I'll
it.
tell you, going through this process with 2 towns, I'm trying to stay organized, so.
Want to ask you a question?
What's that?
Which one's the most difficult to get through? Come on now.
I plead the fifth.
You just gave me the answer.
Yeah, so the signage plan is good.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Awesome.
Have a great night.
Take care.
Enjoy the snow.
Yeah, we should find out if they can
It's
get any
winter.
coyote pots. Oh,
Okay, next, we have, next we have an application for a site plan amendment to merge 2 existing lots, tax map 15, lots 22-1, and tax map 15, lot 23-2, and construct a mixed-use commercial and residential building with associated site improvements. At number 215 Rockingham Road, tax map 15, lot 23-2, zone commercial 2, and route 28, Performance Overlay District, and 217 Rockingham Road, tax map 15, lot 22-1, zone commercial 2, and route 28, Performance Overlay District. The N.W. Investment Group LLC is the owner, the applicant, and this has been continued from the November 18th, 2021 meeting for signage.
And, Mr. Chair, this actually was for signage and the whole entire plan, but the applicant has now changed the project, made significant changes to it, so they're moving more towards doing primarily residential use, based on input that they received from the code enforcement officer, that they could do a residential use with a conditional use permit, so they are looking to move forward down that path. So based on that decision, they're gonna be removed from the agenda tonight.
Yeah.
And when we get a new GR application, then they're gonna come back with that information.
which property was this?
Excuse me?
Which property was this?
This is 215 and 217 Rockingham Road.
Is that the one they wanted to move the lot lines that's near Waterworks?
I can pull up for you.
It was I think, a lot line or
I'm just.
subdivision,
I'm
I think.
lost.
I don't know, is this?
There was a big metal building there, RC Motor.
Yeah, it's kind of like set up a little bit. It's on the south side
Yeah.
of 28.
Yeah.
It's kind of set up in the back, is the hill there.
I think, I don't know. Huh. Residential, huh? Well, whatever.
There we go. This is 217, so it's 215 and 2.
I'm-
I think I got it too.
Okay, I know what that is, okay. That's interesting.
So I
It's
think I'm
not,
moving, like I said, more towards doing
got it, all right, yeah.
residential use of some sort.
Yep.
They will be coming back with a completely different plan.
Yep, well, that is completely different. Houses are a hot item now, so. Okay, that has been withdrawn. We'll probably see them in the future sometime.
That's interesting.
Next, we have the staff reports. there a report on this, Laura? Or,
There is, this is a little bit unique, as this was a minor site plan amendment. So based on it being a minor site plan amendment, the applicant felt it was not necessary for him to appear in front of the commission. Instead, in turn, wrote a narrative for me to read to the commission
Yeah.
for you to make comments on. So I do have a narrative dated January 12th, 2022, directed to the Heritage Historic Commission, to the members of the Heritage Commission. On behalf of 14 Liberty Drive LLC, Dubois and King is providing a project description explaining the project for the upcoming commission meeting. 14 Liberty Drive LLC in Trend Moving and Storage proposes site improvements at the existing commercial facility located at 14 Liberty Drive, Londonderry, New Hampshire, 03053, map 16, lot 60-5. The proposed works includes construction of 2 additional loading docks at the existing facility, site disturbance of approximately 10,000 square feet, and an increase in impervious area of approximately 1,352 square feet, as well as a new subsurface stormwater collection system to augment the existing stormwater management system and attenuate peak discharge from the new impervious area associated with the proposed loading dock expansion. The proposed work is within the previously developed portions of the existing commercial site. The proposed building modifications to loading docks will match the materials and colors of the existing loading dock present. No proposed changes to the building will be visible to the abutters due to existing tree screening or the general public observing the building from Liberty Drive. If you have any questions, I can be reached at 603-637-1043 or at rtsantulas@duboisking.com. Thank you. Dubois and King, Inc., Ross DeSantis.
Okay, this has been before the planning board also, and it's very minor.
Oh,
So this is a condition. So I'll go through the commission again. I'll start with David.
I have no questions.
Okay, John?
No.
Quick
Jim.
question, I take these loading docks are in the rear of the building? So it's not gonna take up any parking area or anything like that?
They're gonna make some
Curious.
changes on the parking. I think it's just very, but
Okay.
they meet our,
Yeah.
requirements and everything.
Oh, no questions.
Okay, Sue?
yeah, I'm good too.
Kristen? Okay, and I am, and that's okay. Okay, next we have other business, and we have Brian Young here in regards to the street naming committee. And I had a question from Sue on how streets get named and everything.
So you're the
And,
culprit, huh?
the old
Well-
old
Oh,
days,
it's
it
okay,
kind of
so-
came through the planning board, and the planning board secretary at that time came up with the names, and the planning board went along with it, but
Oh,
now with the advent of the 911 system, we had to become much more organized and careful. So,
My name is Brian Young. I am the E911 liaison for the town of Londonderry to the state of New Hampshire. I am a firefighter paramedic with the fire department, and this is just one of my extra duties, if you will. So I took this over probably 8 years ago, and it is quite the process, but it is definitely not as you described from the past. So currently, all of the names, road names in the town are what they are. In the past, they've gone through and tried to change and clean up some of the names to make them conform with the E911 standards. So that way we avoid conflicting names, conflicting sounding names in the event of an emergency, because when people are panicked, they don't speak clearly. So going forward, the process here allows us to screen that better before the roads are named and before the roads are built. And it allows us to make sure that we try and meet, to the best of our ability, the E911 standards and guidelines, and then to also appease the general public, because if they're paying for a road to be built, they have a little bit of say. So when somebody proposes a road in a development, which is pretty much how they happen now, the road name goes on the plans that go to the planning department, and that gets sent out to everybody. The street naming committee, I think is what it's officially titled, is the one who is responsible for approving or denying road names, and then submitting it either back for a change or saying, yes, this is okay. From there, it goes through planning and goes through that whole process to go through planning, the planning board, and you folks as well. In that process, we also look at numbering because we want to, again, make sure that houses are labeled in an order that is easy for us to follow and is matching. So that way, if you look left, you see 13, you look right, you see 14 or 12. So the numbers tend to match. I don't know if anybody's gone up High Range Road, but the numbers are very different from left to right. And so if you're looking at mailboxes on one side expecting to see one number and you don't, and then it makes it a little bit more challenging for us responding in an emergency. So to the street naming committee, if you will, is referenced in the town codes that you have in front of you and up on the board. And this is generally what we try to follow. So we typically try to not have names that sound the same. We try to not have people's names as roads. And we try to keep them easy. And we generally try to not have them have east, west, north, south, things like that, because they can be confused with the other side of that name. One of those historic ones is East and West Yellowstone. And so that just got switched to Yellowstone, and it goes all the way around from Litchfield Road to Litchfield Road instead of East Yellowstone, West Yellowstone. We're still stuck with some of the ones like Wentworth Ave and North Wentworth Ave, and then other similar ones like Kelly Road and Kelly Ave. And unfortunately, some of these, there's a lot of pushback from either the residents that currently live on the road or the businesses that have already spent a lot of money in marketing, signage, paper products, and everything that they do. So unfortunately, there's no way for, I believe, no easy way for the town to go, nope, you're no longer Kelly Road or Kelly Ave, because it just creates a ruckus. So we generally try and avoid that, but ultimately, the taxpayers are the taxpayers, and we have to, at some point, keep them happy. So going down to the state of New Hampshire process, if you will, they can't enforce any of these rules. They can only make recommendations that are easier for us to follow and easier for them to follow. And that it's really just that whole eliminating similar sounding names, similar names that are spelled differently, and things of that nature. And again, avoiding like Griffin Road and Griffin Ave. They're not a big fan of Griffin Road and Griffin Ave because mistakes can happen. You know, where do you live? Oh, I live at 2 Griffin Ave, and somebody hears Griffin Road because that's the first one that comes up. And then we, or the police department, goes to the wrong address. And that's, any delay is not acceptable for us, so we try and avoid that if at all possible. And then the big one that they really try to harp on is not having people's names or political names, because it's sometimes it can be cumbersome, and sometimes it's just not an easy thing to put on a road sign. I mean, one of our, I think shortly after this came out, there was the Ray Wazorek Highway. Yeah, right, say that fast. Yeah. And so that was shortly after they suggested that. The state decided to name that the Raymond Wazorek Highway, so they kind of, flaunted their own recommendation, but it is what it is at that point. And ultimately, state roads, they have the ultimate say. Town roads, the say is to the street naming committee. Due to changes in positions and personnel within the police department and assessing department, I'm not sure who actually represents those two departments on the street naming committee anymore. But in the past, it has been myself, Brian Johnson from the fire department, and then the planning department kind of working together to make sure that things tend to make sense for the community. Other than that, I think that kind of hits the gist of things. And I guess if we were to hit numbering real quick, our biggest hiccup with numbering usually involves the post office, because they have certain things that they like to see, and it's typically along the Derry border, because there's certain streets or addresses on the border with Derry that get delivered by the Derry post office. And so we're kind of handcuffed by the post office when it comes to some of those things. And it's the federal government, so dealing with the federal government is dealing with the federal government. So, and if anybody has any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them to the best of my ability. And if I don't know, I can certainly find it out and have Laura here send it out to you guys.
Any questions?
Do you have any questions? Yeah.
How does someone get on the street naming committee?
I don't know.
Oh, yeah,
Because
maybe a town council question.
Yeah.
I would imagine.
Because they did put together this whole thing that, that's part of the municipal code now.
So I'm not sure
Because-
exactly how or who formed said committee,
I'd love to find out some.
but I imagine somebody smarter than me knows the answer to that question.
It's
a good question. I'll
Maybe
find out.
Sherry
We,
was.
we, we can find out
Oh, good. I just-
anyway.
I want to be on it because one of the road names, my mother and I almost passed out, was Crackling Log. And I thought, what? What?
So that whole development has a theme, which is nice for us, so we can hear like Single Leaf or Crackling Log.
the other one,
or,
Falling Leaf.
Falling Leaf. Ooh.
This is
So there's-
legendary.
So there's at least a theme there that we understand it as for us, but I can understand the initial.
Yeah, I think we
Well-
need a little historical perspective to some of the names. You know, at least, you know, how the names get started, or, how do you put a name on the list that would be considered as something?
So most of those names that are in the developments come from the developing organization. So they're the ones who will pick and choose what names they want to suggest or recommend. And as long as there's no conflict within the town, it's hard for us to go, no, you can't do that. Unless it's a safety concern, a too similar sounding name to something else in town, or it doesn't necessarily meet the state guidelines by having, a name or the east, west, north, and south, or things like that.
And that comes up during design review?
Yes.
Is there any, I understand that there's 2 members of the fire department on
Yep.
there. Is there a member of the police department on there?
There was in the past, but
Okay.
they change positions a little bit more frequently than we do, so I'm not sure exactly
Okay.
who represents them currently.
I will find out.
Okay. I was gonna say, because maybe we can have some input with the committee, especially, because Sue is, I know, very, very interested in participating in it.
And if allowed, we'd love to have you.
Mr. Chair,
Crackling Log.
John?
there was a presentation here several meetings ago about the Exit 4A extension and naming that road. I think we
Yes.
came up with the Old Rum Road or something like that, and there was an alternate name. Has that moved forward? Have you seen that? That was the Exit 4A extension?
I have seen that, and whatever was suggested, we hemmed and hawed and discussed, and there wasn't enough reason for us to go, no, that doesn't make sense.
Because that came through the DOT,
Yeah.
and I think we had suggested some names, and Champa was the one who was really championed that, because she had the 2 names. The Old Rum Road was one of them. Derry had some names also, because it had to be between the 2 towns. So she'd gone over to their town council meeting, and they had settled on Old Rum Road, which I guess was fine with the DOT, but the question is the DOT check, which hopefully they would. It's a proper name for the
I know
911
that
system.
I know that Amy Kizak and Brian Johnson and I went over that at least and discussed it and made sure that it didn't conflict with anything that we had in town, and it doesn't. I was also told that there weren't going to be any addresses on it, so it's more just a placeholder, I guess.
Yeah, yes, and I guess it's gonna be more like a throughway than, until it gets into Derry.
Yeah.
I don't know, I think there probably would be one access off it for Londonderry. I think, looking at the Woodmont Commons master plan, there was a little stub, I think it went into that. I'm not sure, I'd have to go back and look at it. But I know it could be, that could be accessed through Ash Street.
Yes.
So I'm sorry, has that been finalized, or do you know where that is in the process?
I believe that it's been finalized through the process,
Oh, cool.
or at least through our process, and then it's onto them for the rest of their process.
I was under the impression that the state approved the old Rum Trail.
Trail, I think is
Trail,
is what
yeah.
we.
And it's a state road, so, you know, they pretty much
Cool.
have authority.
But at least it was nice for them to come
Oh,
and
they
ask
asked,
us.
they asked
So,
both towns, yeah.
'cause usually the state doesn't operate that way, the way it used to, so.
I think, because Art, didn't it get back to, we were talking about it on the planning board
Yes.
one meeting, so I think it
Yeah.
did, it has gotten the good graces of the
Yeah, I
state.
think it's been,
Yeah.
it's gone through, so I haven't seen any official proclamation, but
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll, see what the next map from the state says on it.
Right?
Okay, so we'll campaign for Sue, get Sue on the,
No more crackling log.
I saw that, all you think was like Crackling Rosie, you know, so.
Thought my mother and I were gonna pass out when we saw that sign. Oh, my gosh.
I can admittedly say I'm not from town and I don't know a lot of the history about, like, I live in town now, but I did not grow up in town, so I don't know a lot of the history behind some of these roads.
There's a lot
So
of
I don't have
rich
a lot of-
history. It's,
I don't have a lot of buy-in into the historical aspect of it, but I can tell you from the safety concern, things are improving.
Well, that's,
What we want to hear.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Progress.
Exactly.
Would your committee, Brian, maybe that's not the right name for it, but be interested in getting some historical names from us to maybe just put on a list to propose to contractors that come to you with crackling log?
I don't think that we would be opposed to that. I think that having options to give would be a good thing, because sometimes there are conflicts or they don't necessarily read through all of the road names in the town, and they may either duplicate it or have something that is very similar sounding. So if we have suggestions that might be in line with what they're looking for, I think that it would be beneficial to us in the process.
Yes, that's what I was hoping.
Because, Mr. Chairman, I think there were a couple of names that came up during the conversation about the Old Rum Trail that
Yes.
might be applicable, we could supply to Brian for
Yeah,
future
I
roads.
think, and I think Sue, through the Historical Society would have names also, so.
Oh, I forgot about that. You
Yeah.
mentioned, but I started a list in my car, and I must have flipped it over to write something, and I don't know where it went, but.
So how about if you develop a list for us? Oh, you drove around and looked
I-
at
no.
crackling log. What the hell?
Like I said, I honestly did. I had it in my car, and then I must have.
Where is it?
Well, I just, wait. I must have
Dog ate
flipped it. Nope, or I flipped it to write something on it, and then that went in the rubbish, and I thought, oh, my God. So I
Oh.
barely started some, I was thinking, but it's not gonna work, because I know it rhymes with something. The dairy farm, that was it was Pinkham Dairy, you know, all that, and I thought, oh, Pinkham, and I thought, no, Tinkham, we have a Tinkham, see?
Tinkham
Because
and
my
Tink-
aunt lives on Tinkham, that's why,
Pinkerton.
that's right.
No, we wouldn't let that one fly.
Oh, I know, I thought of that too, I said, all of a sudden Pinkham, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's not gonna work, so.
Yeah, one of them was Rosecrans, which Rosecrans Pillsbury is a very famous name. His father was a colonel, I think, in the Revolutionary War times. And he started a shoe company. He was he was a lawyer. He started actually what is now the union leader.
Okay.
And named Pillsbury got into the flower business, and it's from Pillsbury Flowers from Rosecrans Pillsbury.
Wow.
And the house is just down on, Pillsbury Road, sitting up on the hill.
Okay.
Hallowed grounds. But Pillsbury is a very common name between Londonderry, Derry, and the area. We already got a Pillsbury Road. Jake?
Brian, just curious, how often do you have trouble as a department responding somewhere where you might have one unit go to somewhere else that they shouldn't be going because of a road name?
I would say maybe a dozen times a year.
Wow, really that
Is
much, huh?
just a lot of it is usually the Griffin Ave, Griffin Road
Yeah.
Harvey, Hovey, and Hardy.
Yeah.
Can sometimes be
Oh.
confusing. Those tend to be the big ones.
Yeah.
That just because they're a little bit common.
Yeah.
Kelly Road and Kelly Ave are similar, but they're two
One's
completely
commercial, one's residential.
yeah, two completely different kind of environments.
Yep. So it happens more often than you
Yeah.
would think, though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it happens quite a bit,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, it requires a lot on our dispatchers to make sure they're double checking on those roads, and it requires a lot on our company officers and responders to make sure that they're
General knowledge.
yeah they're double checking too, because if they're not aware of the knowledge about it, then they may end up going to the wrong place.
Yep.
Kelly Road,
Yep.
Kelly Ave.
So, thank you.
Yeah, more than I realized, so. Okay. Good, we're set. Campaign for Sue, and thank you very much, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
You're very welcome. If anybody
Appreciate
has
it.
any questions, feel free to reach out, and I'll try my best to answer them. And, I mean, if you guys are gonna find the answer for how do we get Sue involved, then that would be great too.
Okay, I'll find out.
Yeah,
Oh, yes.
All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
okay. Let's see, Dave Ellis couldn't be available tonight, and so Rick Holmes and David are gonna be postponed till our March meeting. I think you'll find Rick very entertaining and colorful, and such a knowledge of Londonderry history. And he's a former Derry town historian.
Oh, yeah.
Derry's town historian position, I think, is open, and so is Londonderry's.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Okay, next we have is town tree replacement, and Jake had been so gracious to donate some of his time to come in to talk to us. He sent an email to myself, which I've given to Laura, I think everyone has it, in regards to the replacement of the two, I have to say quote-unquote, pine trees that were taken down on the common. And those were kind of almost like a landmark, you know, so. So it's finding something that is gonna look like that, something that could be as tall as that, and something that could survive in the ground out there. And develop a root system we won't disturb.
Absolutely. So I think, I'm sure you have gone over this at this point, but, what had happened to those trees is most likely from, damage that had occurred during the drainage process. The roots got disturbed, and you started seeing, at first, if you looked at it, it was one side of the tree that started to die, and as it went on, the entire trees were taken over. I had sent an email a couple weeks ago with some recommendations on replacements. I had put Serbian spruce, Norway spruce, a baby blue spruce, or a concolor fir. I think would all be good replacements for what was there. I believe it was a type of Norway, correct? Norway spruce that was there originally. Some of the ones I sent you, though they're not necessarily native to New Hampshire or New England, they have a little bit better of a time withstanding the elements that we live in. They've got a stronger root base. Evergreen trees in general, as they grow up and they get taller, they start to lose their undergrowth. That's why when you look at big white pines, you see 50, 60 feet of tree that don't have a branch on it, and then it's the 60 feet and up that start to have branches on it. Very common with an evergreen tree. My first pick, the Serbian spruce, is really more from an aesthetic standpoint. I think they hold up a little bit better, especially as they age. Everybody, when they plant a tree, they see it at still a relatively immature stage in its lifetime. It's an 8 to 10 foot evergreen tree is the most common what you see that is that's been installed, and it's a beautiful, perfectly upright, very symmetrical tree. But as they grow, they get bigger. They start to you start to see branches die off. It's possible to get a little bit of disease in some of the branches. With those Serbian spruces, you see a little bit less of it. Part of that is also the maintenance aspect to it. You you plant a tree and it's good to go, it can grow, let it do whatever it wants. It's not just maintenance from a watering standpoint, but also from a trimming and pruning standpoint to, make sure that yearly or at least every other year, you're having somebody go in and take out any of the cross growth that may start growing into the tree that's gonna affect how those branches grow. And when things start to cross grow, they start to rub. When they start to rub, they start to die. So what happens? You start to get that more sparse looking tree, which, you can see in the picture. They just, over time, when you look at that thing, when it looks like a Christmas tree, if you will, they're very full. They're dense, they're beautiful. You don't see all those bald spots. That's because with a Christmas tree, you look at a Christmas tree in a Christmas tree farm, it's something that's maintained yearly. It's something that it's pruned every year. It's taken care of every year to meet that standard of what people expect. It's important to continue that after it's grown. And unfortunately, a lot of the time, people just kind of forget about it. They think it's in the ground, it's good to go. But no matter what you plant there, I think the most important part of it is a maintenance aspect. From a replanting standpoint, the human eye is, believe it or not, and I'm a person that very much so likes even numbers. I've got the heat set in my car is either set to 72 or 74. It's never set on 73. But believe it or not, the human eye is actually much more attracted to odd numbers. So if we were to replant this, I would say do either 1 or 3. Don't do 2, because you're going to get, again, it goes to that aesthetic look of it. Your natural human eye likes that odd number a lot more. So if, it's one of those things, if you're going to do it, let's do it right. I think you would be fine, if we did one Serbian spruce there, I think it would be fine. Some of the things you have to consider when you're looking into purchasing that Serbian spruce is really, how much money do you want to invest in it up front? You can go and you can get an 8 to 9 foot Serbian spruce for, their retail on them is probably going to be around $400, right? Or you can get something that's upwards of 12, 13 feet. So it's a little bit more mature. It's going to fit the area a little bit more. Granted, it's going to cost, now you're looking at that, $1,500 to $2,000 range, but it's a bigger tree. It looks like it's been there. It doesn't look like you guys planted it this year and it's starting to grow. My recommendation would be, if you're going to do one tree, do something that's a little bit bigger. If you're going to do 3 trees, consider going with something that's a little different. The Serbian spruce, you're going to get that final mature growth, which is at a life, you guys will never see it. I'll probably never see it maturely grown, but it's going to get up to that, 50, 60 foot mark. If you want to go with 3 trees, consider going with something that's going to be smaller, because it's going to look a lot more maintained. That's where something like the blue spruce comes in. Traditional, typical Colorado blue spruce, that's a 60 or 70 foot tree. But there are different varieties of it. Baby blue eyes, just a regular baby Colorado blue. The baby blue eyes tops out at 12, 15 feet, where your baby blue is going to get to that 20, 25 foot mark, which is a lot more manageable. Back to that maintenance standpoint, 30 years from now, if the tree's only 20, 25 feet tall, it's still easy to take care of. You can't really take care of a 50-foot tall tree. It gets to a point where it starts to grow. The downside of the blue spruce is they are a little bit more susceptible to a disease and a fungus. We actually just planted one at Shady Hill that's already got a little bit of fungus on it, which can be treated. You can set up a treatment program to help get rid of it. But that is kind of the downside of that blue spruce variety, is it's a little bit more susceptible to that disease. So that's what makes me think, okay, go with something more like a Serbian spruce. But again, there's a 40 or 50 foot tree. If you're going to do that, let's think long run here. Those 2 trees, when you look at them, they're incredibly crowded. They looked fantastic 80 years ago. They looked awesome. Now they're so crowded, you've got branches growing into each other. That's also going to affect the health of the tree. They really should have been planted 35, 40 feet apart, not 15 feet apart. But 80 years ago, you had an 8-foot tree. 10 feet in between them, it looks beautiful, you know? So that's kind of a lot of stuff to consider. I think no matter what you go with, the biggest, most important aspect of it is that maintenance of it. Again, you know, it sounds kind of silly, but having somebody go in, having an arborist go in and really clean up that tree, you know, every couple years at least, is really gonna help that tree live a lot better. It's gonna help it maintain a healthier root base. You're gonna be able to get rid of, you know, those areas that rub. If you get rid of them, now you're transferring that energy that's growing into that branch. It's going to the rest of the healthy part of the tree. So there's kind of a lot there, but no matter what you choose, the biggest thing I would focus on is maintenance. Again, whether you go with 1 or 3 trees, I personally wouldn't go with 2. That's just knowing the way the human eye works and what looks most aesthetically pleasing. I personally wouldn't go with 2. If you're gonna go with 3, I probably wanna steer you away from the Serbian spruce, because in reality, at the end of the day, 3 trees of Serbian spruce is a lot of tree in that small space. That's where you consider, you know, that smaller tree that has been trained, or the baby blue eye, blue spruce, that type of thing. That's gonna give you a little bit less height.
And what was the mature height on the baby blue?
The baby blue, you're gonna, whether you go with baby blue eyes or baby blue, they're
Yeah.
two different varieties. You're gonna be anywhere from like 15 to 25 feet. So you're looking at half the size of the tree. Pretty big difference. Even just from a, you know, a yearly standpoint of the town, if it's something that they say, you know, the Presbyterian Church, the fire department goes over every year, they put lights on it. It's a lot easier to put lights on a 20, 25-foot tree than it is a 50, 60-foot tree. So, you know, if it's something down the road where, again, it's not so much for me, it's not so much for you, but my kids, when they're at time to start decorating the common, it's gonna be a little bit easier for them to decorate and light up, you know?
It's interesting.
Well, we can take our time to think about it, or, I mean, if the commission's interested in going something for springtime, we can, you know, make a decision now,
Yeah.
or even our next meeting.
Yeah, and I mean,
And,
there's, you know, you've got, it's something where everything I've given you is a relatively common tree. So no matter where you source it, you're not really gonna have trouble. Where you might have trouble is if you say, hey, we want a bigger tree. It's gonna take a little bit longer to source. There's not as many growers out there that focus on growing, you know, a fully mature 25-foot baby blue eyes blue spruce. You know, we still get, granted, I think 6 or 7 in a year, but they're still only at that 12-foot mark, you know? So everything that's there is not something that's gonna be very difficult to get. So if you made a decision in April, there's a very good chance that by May, it can be sourced for you. No matter who you go with to source that, any nursery, any grower should be able to source any of these trees for you relatively quickly. Chances are they're gonna have an 8-foot in inventory. You know, again, it's if you wanna go with that bigger tree, gonna take a little bit more time, take a little bit more logistics. The biggest thing you'll probably wait for is that nursery's gonna wanna bring it in with another group of trees to help keep your costs down. Whereas if you said, you know, hey, we want this 20-foot baby blue eyes and it's located in Oregon somewhere. It's currently $11,000 to ship a truck from Oregon. So, you know, any grower in their right mind is gonna put that tree with the rest of an order. So, you know, these growers or retailers will say, hey, listen, we've got an order coming in June, July. We'll add it to that order. So you're not absorbing that just absolutely astronomical cost for shipping right now. Believe it or not, the tree's the cheap part.
So question, what's the yearly growth on the baby?
You're still gonna look at, depending on the year, anywhere from 6 inches to a foot, but it's gonna get to that point where it hits its maturity and it's just gonna start flushing out. You know, you'll get once it hits that maturity, you're gonna get, you know, this much growth instead of a foot of growth, just enough to flush out every year, that type of thing, get its new needles on it. You know, because believe it or not, even though they're evergreen, they still lose needles and gain needles all year long. They flush out. But at that full maturity, you're only going to see a few inches a year. And part of that, you know, with that smaller tree, that baby blue eyes, that goes back to, you know, if you're only growing a couple inches a year, again, this is down the road. This isn't today. This isn't for me. This is my kids. There's a lot less to maintain because it's only throwing a couple inches a year at that point. But like I said, the most important part of it, hands down, is the maintenance aspect of it. It's in the center of town. It's clearly a focal point of town. You know, taking the trees down was a conversation topic through the town because it's part of the town common, you know? So whatever you put back, you want to take care of it, you want to maintain it, and you really want to create a specimen. Not so much there's two different types of trees, regular trees and your specimen trees. As specimen trees grow, you can tell, you know, they're perfect. There's not a thing out of line, and it's a gorgeous tree. So something to consider. I think any of the options I gave you, I read his email, he's kind of on the same page. I know he steers you away from the blue spruces a little bit, and that's because of those fungal diseases it can get. But again, if you want to keep it a little bit smaller, that's going to be your way to go. But the biggest thing is really on that maintenance. You know, take care of it. It's going to look a lot better in the long run.
Last question. Your purchasing habits,
Yep.
when would be the best time? I mean, how much time do we need to really order a tree to get it within a reasonable period of time?
So again, that's kind of a loaded question. You know, for us, we're going to have any of these evergreens that are on this list. We're going to have available come springtime because that's something we order. The biggest thing is if you say, you know, hey, I really want that 10 to 12 foot baby blue eyes.
Right.
We're gonna have to work that into one of our orders, so it might take a little bit longer. It very well could be, depending on, because even when the supply chain is so messed up right now that we put an order in, if we put an order in for a truckload, they might ship us half a truck, because that's just all they can do, and they piggyback another nursery on with it, you know, so if you want something bigger, it's gonna take a little bit more time. Definitely something I'd be comfortable saying that we'll see by the fall. But whatever you have on here, if you're looking for that 10 foot and under, it's something that any nursery around here is going to have in stock. And that's from a retail standpoint. You know, I speak a lot on retail because where I work is a retail nursery. But even all our wholesalers, you know, there's a couple up on 125 in Barrington. This is all stuff that's like run of the mill for them. So they always have it available. Again, it's because, well, they're not native to New England. They grow a lot better. They tolerate New England a lot better than some New England trees. You know, you get white pines, they're a very weak root base. If you look at a white pine that's uprooted, those roots didn't come more than 2-3 feet out of the ground. But it's the base of a tree that's from Metalora. You know, it's huge, but they just don't root. So any of this stuff is really run of the mill unless you say, we want something that's a little bit over 10 feet. To give you an idea of what is a 10-foot tree, right? Did you guys all have a chance to see the trees we had put on the common this year for Christmas? They were a little bit different this year. Usually Shady Hill donates actual Christmas trees to the common, so that way the common can do their lighting display and all that. This year we actually used living trees because, again, supply chain issues. We were about 1,000 Christmas trees short this year. So we said, well, how are we going to make this work? How are we going to be able to make it happen for the town? We actually said, well, you know what? Let's bring living trees up there. So balled and burlap trees. Those balled and burlap trees out of the ground, most of those were hovering about 10 feet with that ball. That's what gets very deceiving. You know, you go look at a tree, you look at it, you go, oh my God, it's huge. And then it gets in the ground and the 2.5 feet of that ball's in the ground, and all of a sudden the tree's up to the top of your head. You go, oh, that looked a lot bigger when it was out of the ground, you know?
Shrunk.
So, but to give you an idea, most of what was on the common out of the ground was about 10 feet.
So I want to ask you a question, in your opinion, because I myself personally, I don't want to get a tree that's really small.
Right,
You know,
I
I mean,
agree.
Something
get
that's,
something that's a little bit more robust.
It,
How
it,
tall do you think, put the, I hate saying this, but put the money aside.
it's what it all comes
Scale.
down to, though.
What- If
You
you
know?
were gonna, if that was your property and you were gonna put a tree on that property, what size?
If
would
I
you
was gonna do it,
suggest?
I would not, if I was gonna do it, I wouldn't get anything over 15 feet. Because when you get over that 15-foot mark, now you're going from, you know, again, we get a handful of 12, 13-foot trees in every year, right? We can install them as a company on our own. We can install them with the equipment we have. You get over that 15-foot mark, you're talking about bringing a crane in to plant a tree. So now, again, it's not the cost of the tree, and the cost of the tree ends up like this. It's the install's just astronomical, you know? It's $3,000 a day to rent a crane, and they don't care if they're there for an hour or 8 hours. It's $3,000. So it's one of those things I wouldn't go over 15 feet because it's just not worth it, you know? But I know it doesn't sound like much, but the difference from an 8 to 10 foot, because everything comes in a 2-foot range. You know, if you go to a nursery, you're looking at a tree, they're gonna have their, they'll have their 4 to 5s, they'll have their 5 to 6s, then right after that, it goes 6 to 8, 8 to 10, 10 to 12, 12 to 14, and so on. So everything kind of goes in a 2-foot range. The difference from that 8 to 10 to that 12 to 14 doesn't sound like much, it's huge. Because you gotta realize, you're not just going up, you're going out. You know, an 8 to 10-foot tree might only be 6 feet wide. A 14-foot tree is gonna be 7 to 8 feet wide. That's huge. That's longer than you laying down on the ground, you know? So it is a lot of tree.
So if, say we wanted to put 3 trees in there,
Yep,
right? And and I'm just thinking of the 25-foot maturity
yep.
height.
I like that.
How far apart would we realistically have to plant
So
them? they
those trees, you know, if you're going with a 25-foot mature width,
Yeah.
right? You're looking, or mature height, excuse me. You're looking at, again, this goes back to maintenance. You're looking at a 25-foot fully matured tree that has been maintained. It's only going to be 10 to 12 feet wide. But if you have a 25-foot mature tree that you haven't maintained, it's gonna be just as tall as it is fat, you know? So it really goes to the maintenance of it. As again, you're planting a tree that was very maintained. It came out of a nursery that's grown it for 30 years. They've taken care of it every single year. It's coming out and it looks like this. You want it to stay like that. So if you have a tree that's gonna be, you know, 12 feet wide, 14 feet on center would be appropriate for it, then 14 feet. I actually said this the other day. You gotta bear with me because I went to Londonderry, so my math might not be the best. But a 12-foot tree wide, if it's 14 feet on center, you should have plenty of room in between them because you're gonna have, that should put what, 2 feet in between a fully mature tree that you can walk through. Again, if you're putting up a 50 or 60-foot tree, you're looking at 20 to 30 feet. That's a lot bigger. It needs a lot more space, you know? And that's where a lot of people, 9 times out of 10, if you look at any landscape design, any landscape plan that's put together and it's not installed by somebody who's actually knowledgeable of trees, you'll quite often see, you know, you'll see 2 green giant arborvitaes within 3 feet of each other. Green giant arborvitaes get 20 feet tall and 8, 9 feet wide, and you've got them on top of each other. So what ends up happening, they grow together and that middle starts dying. More often than not, 9 times out of 10, any sort of tree is planted way too close to whatever's going on. We actually had that art way back on the planning board. It was that development off of Gilcrest Road, right down near the dairies, or the highway shed there.
Oh.
It was gonna be a 55 plus, and I had brought up, they were putting 60-foot trees right on 8 feet away from the road. I was like, what are you guys doing? This is crazy, you know? But again, people don't look at that fully matured tree. They look at it as, how does it look when they leave? You know? So when you put 2 trees today that are 20 feet away from each other, it kind of looks funny. There's a lot of room between them, but you got to look at that full maturity and what it's really going to grow out to. and you'll see that, hey, they're right where they need to be.
Because I would assume that if we put, say, 3 trees in that corner, I don't know where you guys want, whatever,
Yep.
and they're pretty far apart.
Yep.
I'm sure people are gonna go, why did they plant? them
Why
so
did they
far?"
plant-
So
exactly.
that's why I'm asking about
Exactly.
distance and height.
And that's
things
where,
like that.
so how can you tighten them up? That's where getting a little bit bigger of a tree, so getting a 15-foot tree that has been maintained since the day it was planted, that's when you can bring them in a little bit, because they're only gonna grow so much more. They're already so close to that final height. Probably one of the most common questions we get, and believe it or not, I really don't deal with trees or shrubs all that much. I'm more kind of the construction side of things. But the most common question I get when we're designing an install or anything like that, well, how big is my rhododendron gonna get, or how big is my azalea gonna get? It's kind of a loaded question. How big do you want it to get? Because if you sit there and you maintain it, this is very aggressively, but if you take care of it 2 times a year after that first spring flush, and then in the fall when it flushes again, if you maintain it, you can leave that azalea this big for 20 years, you know? But if you don't maintain it, the azalea that's supposed to be 4 by 4, all of a sudden, before you know, it's 8 by 8. And, well, why did it get so big? Well, what did you do to maintain it? Like anything, it's gonna keep growing, so. I hope I didn't throw too much at you at
What's the
once.
best time of year to put a tree in?
So, believe it or not, and I find it to be, well, you ask 10 people, you get 10 different answers, right? The best time of year I find to be a little bit more of a wives' tale. At the end of the day, it all comes down to watering. General rule of thumb is for every caliper of the tree, so 1 inch, a 1-inch caliper tree is 1 inch across. That wants 10 gallons of water a week, okay? That's at one time. A lot of people, they plant stuff, what do you see? They're out there every day watering their tree. It's a little different with perennials and some shrubs, but from a tree standpoint, depending on the caliper of that tree, you know, and what we're talking about here, if you go with something more mature, you're gonna be to that, 5 to 6 inch caliper tree. It wants 50 to 60 gallons of water a week. A lot of people think that means, 60 gallons a week divided by 7 days is what we want to do. You actually don't want to do that, because what happens is you don't let that water absorb into that root base. So if you're giving the tree all 50 gallons at once, 1 time a week, it's saturating that root base, getting all the way through that root ball and getting down to those fibers on the bottom of the root ball. Whereas if you're doing it, say 5 gallons a day, all you're doing is scratching the surface. All you're getting wet is those top roots. Everything underneath isn't getting any water. So it really isn't
Yeah,
a
'cause
matter,
roots,
it's not a matter of time. At the end of the day, if it wants 60 gallons a week, you gotta give it to it.
Yeah, you have to put a lot of water in to get the roots to grow down, otherwise they'll stay
Exactly.
near the surface.
Exactly.
Real quick question again. I've noticed within the past maybe 5 years, you see those water bags that they put
Yep.
around trees.
Yep.
Is it a gimmick or does it work?
We don't like them. If we install anything as a company, we don't put them on the tree unless it's specifically asked by the homeowner. Again, because it gives it that kind of trickle effect. We stress a lot of getting that tree the water it wants 1 time a week, whether that's watered by hand or by an irrigation system. And by irrigation, I mean drip, actual drip right to the root of the tree. You think, even when you're watering your annuals, right? I know you put a lot of hanging baskets on the porch. You don't want to water the flowers. You want to water that root base. So a lot of people think, I'll just put a sprinkler on it. It'll be fine. That's not getting to the root base. You want to get that water down and into those roots, So, yeah, it's a lot to think of. There's a lot more to growing a tree than you think.
Real quick question, with the irrigation that we have on the town common now, can we plumb it to have spigots there? I don't know,
So,
Yeah, I don't
just
know.
curious.
I know a little bit about the irrigation on the common.
If we talk with John Chartier. he
Yeah,
probably has
all of it's 1.5 inches. There's a way to bring it out there. You wouldn't be able to say tap off of a zone
So
that's
that
already
can't-
existing.
okay.
No, because it's going to be, you know, you've got commercial heads that could be putting out 20 gallons a minute. You know, it's crazy. And, you know, that's kind of a whole other thing that you'd want to think of down the road is some of those heads, depending on how close they are to the location of the tree, you might actually want to kind of change the angles on them so they're not directly hitting the tree, because that can injure the tree itself when you're really, you know, again, these are 20, 25 gallon a minute nozzles. They're putting out a lot of water. You don't want that all just hitting right on the tree at once. It can actually injure the tree.
So probably if we make an investment for 1 or 3 trees or whatever it is, best thing to do is just drag a line.
Yeah, yeah.
So we
Again, you could plumb it out.
Curious.
The system is there, you know,
Yeah,
the bulk of a system is in the original install. It's easy to add on to something. You've already got the backflows, you've got the manifolds, everything's set up. You just got to kind of add to it. So you could. Personally, I'd rather go out there once a week and make sure it's getting exactly what it wants. You know, at least for those first 2 or 3 seasons, staying consistent with it. You know.
Jake?
Yeah.
You would have to talk with Dave Oley, I guess, because
yes.
Dave and probably Jake also are kind of, and you, kind of oversee the Ken Allen forest.
Yeah, yeah. And I know Dave would be able to. He'd get it on the right path.
Do we do the kind of maintenance required on these trees elsewhere in town, to your knowledge, or?
Not so much. We do a little bit of, we've done a little bit of trimming in the past few years. This is talking from a Shady Hill standpoint. Over at the library, the crab apples were getting pretty overgrown. It might have been this spring. We had went in and we were very aggressive with those trees because they hadn't, again, you know, they had gotten to a point where people would come in and trim up what was getting in the way of the walkway coming out of the library. They would trim that up, but they never actually got into the trees. And this spring they were in pretty rough shape. We assessed them a little bit, mostly because of issues resulting from the winter. You know, there were a lot of complaints of they're this high off of the ground, the branches, when it's snowing out. So we really looked into them, and you could tell they really hadn't been gone into in God knows how long. You know, we've got a gentleman that specializes in kind of the maintenance aspect of trees, and he must have spent the better half of 2 days out just on the trees along the library here. But the amount of kill we found, the amount of cross growth we found, you know, when you actually, instead of looking at the trees, you actually got underneath them and looked up, the amount of split branches and stuff that we found was pretty remarkable, which ultimately was the reason why we said, hey, let's go through these trees, because they were in worse shape than we thought. The town had requested that we take some branches off. You know, the birch branches were leaning on the roof of the library, that type of
That was
thing.
a concern.
And we had gotten over there, and we started really assessing the trees, and we're like, wow, these are in rough shape. So we prune those back very, very hard, which in turn is really good, because now all that energy on those trees, on those branches that were broken, that were rubbing, are gonna go to those healthy branches now. The bloom this spring, I'm looking forward to. You know, it always looks beautiful. Wait for it this spring, you know?
Well, I guess my concern, Jake, was we need to do the correct thing maintenance-wise by whatever we put in. So,
Yep.
but keeping in mind, the town has a lot of responsibilities.
Absolutely.
You know, which of the trees, would it be the Serbian, or your other recommendation would be the most foolproof in terms of if somebody didn't do the best job?
Yeah, I would say that's going to be the Serbian, and that's not so much from it's a little bit from a maintenance standpoint, but it's more from that chance of a fungus growing on the tree, something like that. you're gonna see a lot less of the chances aren't huge, but you're gonna see a lot less of a chance inside of that Serbian spruce than you are that blue spruce.
Yeah.
Again, if you go with that Serbian, I would really consider only doing one tree, you know, because it's gonna get big.
For the committee, I had sent a query to the county forester, and he echoed almost verbatim what Jake has said here today. I think just reading what he wrote, his number one recommendation, if we were going to go with a tree that's not necessarily native, but it's not invasive, was the Serbian.
Yeah,
He liked that.
absolutely.
But in fairness, I sort of prejudiced him by saying we wanted something that was as majestic as the Norways that
Yep.
used to be there. So
Yep.
that might have tainted his opinion a little bit. He also mentioned white spruce. Did you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, I find them to be, again, it's a bit more of a native tree than your Serbian or your Norway, but I do find them to be a weaker tree. You know, they've got a shallower root base. They start to lose their branches a lot sooner, that type of thing.
Well, my opinion is, at the end of the day, even if it ends up being one tree, because we don't want to have them so spread out, I would, and I understand what you're saying about the longer term thing, but
Yeah.
since my longer term is limited,
Yeah.
I would be more inclined to go to the Serbian with the hope that we could invest in some of the maintenance and make it look, but end up with something that's really big at the
Yeah,
end of the day.
I have to agree. Like I said, you know, if you want 3 trees, don't go with the Serbian. But if you want really one good, solid tree, go with that Serbian spruce. Give it the room it wants to breathe and grow correctly and mature to its full size. Again, in a time that you're not going to see, I'm not going to see. It's going to be my children that see. You know.
So based on that, what size should we plant?
Not over 15 feet. You know, you get
Okay.
above 10 feet, you're going to start looking at a more significant cost. You know, the price from an 8 to 10 foot to a 10 to 12 foot almost doubles. Last year, you know, an 8 to 10 foot Serbian, I think it was around 450. You know, so you can anticipate that.
4,500 or
No, $450. Yeah, you can anticipate that 10 to 12 foot to be, you know, closer to that $1,200 range, $1,200 range. Again, that's last year's prices. We've got a million confirmations in the book and still not one single price on a tree. So
What's the install for a 12 to 15 foot round number?
the way, that's such a loaded question because knowing Ron, you know, he's gonna say, just sell him the tree and we'll take care of it because it's for the town. But generally speaking, the install price is, the way we do it from a retail standpoint, is 70% the price of the tree.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the other, with the Serbian, I guess the other advantage I potentially would see is we'd only be doing one of them.
Yeah.
As opposed to three of
Absolutely.
the other ones. so.
Absolutely, and that, you know, depending on what a budget looks like, that gives you the ability to go with a more mature tree.
Yeah, we'll have to take a look at our budget and see what we do have for money. It would be up to the town manager.
Yeah.
Does that Serbian tree or any of the others create problems with walking underneath them due to roots that may be at ground level or just below?
Well, not right off the bat. I mean, when we plant it, obviously you can't walk under it. You know, again, that's going to be something that is, it's my children will be walking underneath it. And there's very much the possibility for those roots to start grow closer to the top. So you might see, just like I'm sure if you've got a tree in your yard, you see the roots start to grow towards the top. That's kind of just the natural course of a tree, no matter what it is. And a lot of that goes with the nutrients in the soil. You know, I
Is
know
there any
there's,
root action that might interfere with the things that are underground out there?
yes, absolutely. You could see down the road, depending on, I wouldn't be worried about any of the under drain they put in. It'd probably be able to handle it for a pretty good long time. You know, you could see 15, 20 years down the road. What's very common, depending on where the irrigation is they'll actually wrap around the line. So you might see when that zone is on, say there's 10 heads on the zone, you'll notice the heads that are after the tree might have a little bit less water coming out of it. You can see they're not throwing the same distance, and that's because over that course of 15 or 20 years, the branches really start to cut off the circulation to that pipe that is feeding those lines. So there's always that possibility. That's with anything. That's with any type of tree that goes anywhere near an irrigation.
What about runoff from the road, et cetera,
You're
affecting the tree?
You're talking in terms of you're more concerned of like a contamination from road salt, that type of thing.
Salt and or oils?
Yeah, I would think they're far enough off the road over there that they're really not getting, you know, that really hard road salt. When you look at a road, you can see the 10 feet off the road after the winter. It's really matted down. The coloring's different. That's from all that road salt. With how far they are off of the road, I don't see it affecting them. I'm sure some degree of salt is going to get to them through groundwater, but I don't think it's going to be something where you're going to see it hurt the tree.
Okay, so we'll have to find out what we have for money, and what I gather, it sounds like probably a tree in the vicinity of 12, 10, 12.
10 to 14 feet.
14,
Yeah,
10 to
yeah.
14 feet, and just go with one and see how it goes, and we can further down the line make a decision on what to keep it company.
Yeah, absolutely.
John?
Mr. Chairman, it sounded to me like, I think Jake only said it 14 times about the importance of maintenance.
Yeah.
Should we be including, when we go to the town manager or whoever for money, the cost of at least a couple of years' worth of maintenance?
Yeah, absolutely.
in our proposal?
Yes.
Because I think, if I heard correctly, particularly the first couple of years are critical.
So crucial, absolutely.
Yes, because we buy a tree, that's to be a big investment from what I hear what the costs are.
Yeah.
We think we got to protect it.
I think, and this is more of a personal opinion, I think your biggest cost inside of the maintenance would be from a pruning standpoint, not so much a watering standpoint. Watering, I would think, is something that would be able to be handled in-house through Public Works. They'd be able to take care of it. But it's that, really that one time a year and going through and pruning out anything that might have grown into each other and keeping it neat. What's good is your maintenance time is so much less if you're taking care of it off of the bat. Your average arborist is going to be able to get through it in a half a day. He's going to be able to clean it up, take care of it, make it look just the way he wants. If you've got some growth that started to grow under and it's starting to touch the ground, he's going to want to prune that up a little bit. Believe it or not, you don't want anything touching the ground. You always want it off of the ground a little bit because that's what can introduce a disease or an insect into the tree, is it touching the ground. But when it's a maintained tree that you are continuing to maintain, the labor involved in it is so much less than, hey, we haven't touched this tree in 10 years. It's starting to not look the best. We really want to get it cleaned up. Then you can see an arborist spend, 2 days on a tree. But again, that's a tree that's not been maintained. Whatever you're planting is a tree that has spent its entire life being maintained and trained. So all you have to do is continue to maintain that. So from a labor standpoint, there's a lot less involved than if you said, let it sit for 10 or 15 years and then say, we want to clean this tree up a little bit.
So Jake, for a dollar amount that Art is going to try to get through some committee here to get paid, ballpark on a 12 to 15 foot Serbian?
Yeah, so we'll go, just to give you all kind of basic retail numbers. You're gonna be looking probably, and again, this is so tough because we still haven't even gotten numbers back, but based off of this year, if you're going for that 12 to 14 foot, you're gonna be anywhere between $1,200 and $1,500 for the tree. Your average retail install of that's gonna be 70% of the tree. So 70% of 1,200's probably around $1,000, right? And then your yearly maintenance, if you were to try and budget a yearly maintenance on it, even if you figure just 6 hours of labor, and the average labor rate for an arborist is anywhere, we charge about $65 an hour. It goes anywhere from $65 to $125 an hour, So factor in 6 or 8 hours of labor a year, which I think is being pretty generous with how long it would take. Realistically, if it's a well-maintained tree, he's gonna be in and out of there in 3 hours, On pricing of the tree, I cannot stress enough, that's based off of what I saw last year. God only knows what'll happen until we get to April, so.
So Laura, you talked with Kevin?
I did speak with Kevin prior to the meeting.
Yeah.
And he did not give me a dollar figure per se, but he did recognize the importance of the town common. So the board wanted to give me a number to go back with him. I think
Yep.
he seemed to very much recognize the importance of making that look the way the town would want it to look.
Yes, so I think it's probably like a 15-foot Serbian spruce. And then the maintenance, 6 to 8 hours per year. The $65 per hour is gonna change, I'm sure. But, I don't know what we need to do in regards to quotations or just soliciting different dollar amounts. But it'll be up to Kevin.
When I spoke to Kevin, he knew we had the meeting tonight, and he basically, directed me to get input from the board, and again, he recognizes the importance of making that look nice. So if the board wanted me to go back with him, given the figures that Jake put out, for the 1,500 for the tree, the 1,000 to install, and 8 hours worth of labor, $800, that would be 3,300. I can go to him with that for the one tree and see where that goes, and if that's something the commission wants me to do, and that would just give us a little bit of a leeway to get everything in motion.
Bernard, I think if it's something that you would like to really move forward with, let us do some real research into what it's gonna cost. Maybe I can come back to the board a month or two from now when this season's pricing is out and so forth, and we can get you a real idea of what it would cost this year.
Does the commission agree to, this is what we'll pursue, to,
Yes.
at least have
I'll see
one,
Kevin on Friday.
yeah. One of the other, I heard from Steve Lee, for the, concerts on the Common, and they have a banner they strung in between the two trees.
I thought of
Yeah,
that.
And he wanted to know what could be done, if posts could be put in to stretch a banner, or if there's something there.
yeah, I mean, you could do any now, so they usually put it right between the two Norways, correct?
Yeah.
Again, you're not gonna be able to string anything up on that tree for my lifetime or
Oh,
your
yeah.
lifetime.
You can't be like,
But you could explore, putting poles up, something like that. The only thing that would steer me away from it is what does it look like when concerts on the Common is not going on?
yes.
Me, naturally, I would say throw a couple American flags on it and it looks fantastic, but.
No, I talked to Dave Wally about it. He's gonna come up with some
Oh, okay.
ideas on maybe some poles that can be removed.
Yes, like
installed so they
portable
can't be
poles.
removed. So he's aware of it, let's put it that way.
Or you even hang it from the monument that's there. Need a crane for that.
Yeah.
Be out of the question, really.
Uh,
Okay, So we've got with that done. We have election of officers, and
Thank you, Jay.
Chris
No,
is-
not a problem, my pleasure.
Thanks, Jake.
Not a problem, sir.
Appreciate it. I got an education, too. so. Election of officers. So Chris isn't here, but I hadn't talked with him at all, but I had briefly mentioned, I think, back in November, after the November meeting, is to continue with the current slate of officers. So I would take a motion that we would continue with Chris as chair, myself as vice chair, and John as secretary. Someone else wants to run, they certainly can.
I move
we
we
may-
continue with the current slate of officers for the next year.
Okay, motion by David,
Second.
second by Jim. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Abstentions? Chair votes affirmative, and we have our slate of officers for 2022. The other thing that I'd gotten an email, I think several days ago, from the state New Hampshire Division of Historical Resources in regards to the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions. And the first 3 grants, it looks like we have to be a member of that organization, in which we are not. So probably would not really apply. And also, the deadline, I think, is beginning of February. Where was it here?
February 14th, I think.
Yes, yes, so really, if we want to become a member, there's $100. I mean, there's gonna be money involved with this, so I don't think those first 3 apply. I think the other thing, if we really want to be a member, I think for the commission to think about it, what would it do for us? We can always do that in the future. And then there's, they call those the mini grants. And the other part of the email is in regards to, mini grants are due by Monday, February 14th at noon. But the other is the, kind of like what they've had before. And I think all we need to do is submit just a letter of intent, which we did last year. Because what we're looking for is grant money for like an intern student to go and inventory our historic places. Because we have a list from, there was a task force back in 2006, and I think it was adopted by the town council that time, I think in 2008. And that is our list of, I think, is 137 houses, and we had basic ground rules. And it's anything older than 100 years, which now more houses are eligible. The state says it's 50 years. That'd put a lot on the list. So, maybe at least review what we have on there. And I know when we had done it back in 2006, 2007, it was John Dalford and Steve Young spent several weeks going around photographing places. And I brought all the photos back here, and we just sat and looked at the photos and decided, on the overhead, decide what, constitutes the criteria, and we'll put on the list, and those that didn't. So it's a process. And I think at the time we said we'd do it about every 10 years, so we've got more than 15 years have lapsed. The question is, do we need more houses on the list? So if we go by 50 years of the state, what the state says, it, to me, puts a lot on. You're getting into the 60s, which to me is kind of like the modern era, even though it's 60s style. It's like, oh God, that's way back then. So at least if we can get a grant to have an intern, at least to take a look at, be sitting down with the assessor, going through the records, and then going out and visually just looking at it. You have to have the permission of the property owner to set foot on that property. But you can take a photo from, the street, that's where most of the photos that we have in the start taking from is from the street. And I think Tim Thompson at the time took a number of those photos also. The thing is, if we get our letter of intent in, at least we get our foot in the door a little bit, and then we'll go from there, figure out what to do next, what we want for an inventory. Okay, any other business? Oh, public input. Any of the public have comments?
Hands are going up.
Yeah, all my input's in.
Okay, seeing no input, no further business, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A move by David. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Sue seconds. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
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 We are adjourned.